Okay? Okay. Thank you very much for having me today. And it's a wonderful occasion for me. And today I'm focusing on the notion of event and how it works. And it is thought to work in the philosophy of mind and of time, and especially in Bergson's thought. Before that, in the chapter 1, I will quickly overview the position of the event in the modern thought. So, let me introduce myself quickly. So, I'm the director of PBJ, the project Bergson in Japan, since 2015. So, these 3 years, especially, this project was dedicated for reassessment of his second book, Matter and Memory, through confrontation with various contemporary fields such as AI or psychiatry or sociology or cognitive neurosciences. And these posters are designed by one of my friends since my art university students period. So I have the text handout printed out, and I'm reading, skipping here and there. So, in chapter 1, so in everyday ontology, beings are often divided into two categories, such as things and process or events. The formal ontology prefers to choose the terminology of continuant and occurrence. A continuant is basically things, and occurrent is events or processes. And so a microphone is continuant, and this colloquium is occurrent. Okay? And it would be noteworthy that these two types of beings are also different in relation to change in time, because a thing can change through time, but an event taken as a whole cannot modify its content anymore. So Donald Davidson, a famous philosopher, has famously elaborated these conditions. And second point, so it is the famous point also, since Kant, so before Kant, such as Descartes or Spinoza, the relation of causation was taken as the relation between things or substances. But after Kant, so there was a shift from thing causation to event causation. For example, so it is not adequate to say that something A causes a something B, but it should be said that a collision of a thing A causes a reaction of the thing B, something like that. So this is a causation relation, okay? Causal relation. And third, so a founder of contemporary philosophy of time, Scottish philosopher J.S. MacTaggart, has proposed a double-layered model of the time, which has become a frame of reference today in the debates of time. According to this picture, the time is not a monolith, but consists of two distinct structures, respectively named A series and B series. And here also the notion of event prevails over that of thing. The B series roughly corresponds to the causal chain of events, each node of which is determined by successive before-after relation called tenseless. The A series is, in contrast, defined by past, future, present relation called tensed. So this gives us a perspective of so-called dynamic transition of passing time. Okay. Like this. Okay. So while the B series regards the time as static, changeless, ordered relation among multiple events, the A series focuses on a given single event which is going to exchange its tense. For instance, it's too much. Huh? For instance, suppose a B series such as breakfast, class, lunch, and meeting, shopping, a party. So this sequence itself, defined by the relative tenseless relation between events, does not change in time. But among these events, take one event, for example, say a party, the party. It starts from being future, gradually approaches towards the present, then becomes present, and finally passes away. This is called the A series, and it does change its tense in the direction of the past. Okay. You see? So lastly, whence arises the appearance of the present moving forward, this time not coming direction, but going direction. So it is explained by Magdagot by combination of these two distinct series, A series and the B series. So this is, I made this like this. So A series changes its tenses, and the order is defined by B series. So this combination makes as if the present itself, present is marked by green. So present as if moving go forward, so in the direction of future. So this is the explanation of Magdagot of how dynamic motion is made. Yeah. So now, today I will focus on the philosophy of Bergson. So in Bergson's theory of time, what will be how the notion of event works. Henri Bergson, French philosopher of time, contemporary with Magdagot, has developed a different perspective on this topic, mainly in his second book, Matter and Memory. Although the notion of event is not highly conspicuous in his text, but it indeed plays, as I will probably like to show below, quite an essential role both in his ontology of time as well as in his philosophy of mind. So first, of time. Okay? First of all, for Bergson, the most fundamental demarcation suffers a significant change. Primarily, the category of thing disappears, or its ontological reality is largely devalued. Okay? According to him, what we commonly call things are not given in the world as they appear to us, since the casual categories of ordinary things are selected and cut out from the material continuum based on our practical interest and life form. So, the mode of division of surrounding objects reflect our own possible reaction against them. As he clearly states, I quote in the slide, division of matter is an artificial division. Okay. So not only that, the second point is the time scale. The scale counts. The material, so more importantly, these objects are individuated in terms of our own spatial-temporal scale. So the material world which surrounds us, taken in itself, is nothing but an uninterrupted whole composed of a huge number of microscopic physical vibrations or oscillations, mutually overlapped and intertwined. In this sense, a thing is revealed to be, in reality, a multiplicity of occurring processes. It is our bioecological utilitarian nature, and especially temporal scale gap, which makes them static and discrete. In Bergsonian ontology, thus, there is no place left for non-becoming static things. Everything of present flows, but in different rhythm of durée. Material world has a durée in its microscopic timescale, however seemingly instantaneous. Our present experience is, of course, also a durée in our own relatively larger timescale, far more complex and internally organized. So it is not a mathematical instant, but has a certain relatively large breadth of the present, thanks to which we can experience flow of time, such as melody auditions or visual motions, etc. So, the real ontological distinction should be drawn not between thing and event, but between event in durée or process and event in itself. So, that is event in proper sense, which I would like to show below. Since the both two appear to be temporarily extended, so this distinction tends to be overlooked under the ordinary framework, ordinary philosophical framework. In fact, basic formal ontology does not distinguish these two. So, as we already saw, in the common theory, the notion of event is used indifferently of its temporal properties, such as tense and aspect. They say equally present event, future event, and past event without perceiving no ontological differences between tenses. And also, they do not care if the event is taken as ongoing, that is, in the progressive aspect, or as completed in the perfective aspect. But from the ontological perspective, of course, Bergsonian time, there are, claims Bergson, crucial distinctions among them, because the notion of event is both tense sensitive and aspect sensitive. So I would like to show how they are important, but it has some detailed discussion. So I think I have no time for deeply in, but so I skipped the schematic presentation of this section. So look at this table. So firstly, the event must be perfective. So this I need to skip this one. So let me make a precision. So this is a conceptual precision that is important. So the event which we are talking about today is, in this context of ontology, is the event as particular, not universal. So to be a particular thing, so an entity necessarily has the complete set of properties sufficient for its identification, of course. Then a real concrete event taken as a particular cannot have its full determination before its completion. Okay? Because while occurring, its details can always be added or modified, including its own duration time. We cannot acquire the complete set of properties to identify the particular event in question until the event has been completed. This means that an event, in a fully determinate sense, comes into existence only when it becomes perfected. That is, it has been completed. Okay? So this is why the past does exist in the frame of, in the name of event. So that is Bergson's crucial theory of conservation of past in per se, past per se. So in that sense, taken in that sense, the event must be perfective. Okay, that is I've just talked about. So to identify a particular event, it needs to be perfective, and of course the inviolability of the past is also important. And second, an event must be past to otherwise, if the present event and the future event was also event, which is perfective, the whole time would be a frozen one. So we need to let them go, let the present and future free from perfective aspect. The third, process. So I propose the terminology should be differentiated from event in this sense. So we can say, of course, a present event in the sense of process, but I would like to avoid any possible confusion, conceptual confusion. Today I distinguish the term. So I call a present event as process today. Okay. So process must be present. Okay. And the process must be imperfective. It's by definition. So this point is important because so in chapter 4 of matter memory, Bergson developed a very enigmatic thesis that it says the motion is indivisible. What does it mean? But in my view, so this is why the motion must be indivisible, because the motion, so only the motion in motion it deserves to be called a motion. So a motion once completed is not a motion already. So being a process or motion or movement or flow, or whichever wordings, but if something is process, it needs to be necessarily imperfective. Okay, and so if so, the fallacy should be doubled, because which would be, I'm going to 2.3. So nevertheless, we tend to easily extend the notion of event to the whole period of time, indifferently of its tense, as we saw in the case of event causation and the B series of McTaggart's time. Thus, we start talking about an event independently of tense, which is in fact non-existent. So on the other hand, one often makes a process as a thing by killing its nature of imperfectiveness. In these cases, what we call event is actually a representational construct rather than a reality in time. Here we see what he famously calls specialization of time. There is a conceptually slippery slope from real temporal elements to its projection onto our mental space. So this is what it looks like the Whitehead's fallacy of concreteness, misplaced concreteness. So I distinguish these two fallacies, which is perfectivation, which takes process with what is a process in reality as perfective thing, and an eternalization, which takes an event as tense-free. So it's a kind of generalization. Okay, but the reality is these two emphasized blocks. And make things worse, there is a position called four-dimensionalist, which so they are doubly errored. Okay. Anyway, so this is what I meant to be called. So to introduce the relation of event and mind. Okay. The most prominent and original feature of Bergson's philosophy of mind is the way he proceeds the investigation of mind on the basis of the ontology of time above articulated. As he puts it, the question of mind must be established in terms not of space but of time. I quoted 30. Since his ontology is made hybrid, so dual, his philosophy of mind has also two stages: the present conscious experience and its incorporation of past events. Okay, present process and the past events. So the former part might be well known as his theory of durée, of course. As we suggested earlier, our present experience is intrinsically durational, which means that it is entirely process-like. But the most intriguing point of his theory of durée is, in my view, its pluralism. The time is not homogeneous. Different durées are contemporaneous in a non-exclusive way. According to matter and memory, what makes our experience subjectively qualitative and differentiate it from a single stimuli processing is the living system's temporal breadth, sufficiently larger than material vibrations, which serves as our perceptual material. So such a time-scale gap certainly causes a stabilizing effect, as we have shown, but at the same time, it brings us new emergent qualities at the price of this perfectivation. Okay. We cannot distinguish each oscillation of the light wave. It's oscillating 4 trillion times per second, which he wrote in his text. Neither of the sound wave, of course. But we experience the qualia of colors and sounds instead, for the very reason of such the coarser temporal resolution. Okay. We see the blurred wings of fly 200 times per second by not seeing each instantaneous motion. A fluorescent light, no, this time, no, but it is blinking in its own time scale, so it would be 100 times per hour, per second, but we see it not blinking for us because our own temporal resolution. But still blinking for flights, they have more higher resolution of eyes. So we might enumerate examples of stroboscopic effect, such as whale rotating inversely, seemingly inverse, or the scratch-like tail of shooting star. The timescale gap, thus, profoundly conditions what our experience is, which we might call time qualia. So there are different time scales coexisting and contemporaneous. So there are time scale gap between us and environment. So this causes intrinsic viewpoint, which makes the simple time breadth into an experience. So in order to grasp the nature of a temporal experience, it will be highly significant to distinguish two modes of description Firstly, consider the fact that 1 second is longer than a millisecond, of course, and a century is shorter than a millennium. You find that it is merely a mathematical truth, having nothing to do with being an experience. However, what would it be when you say plainly a second, 1 second is short, simply, or a century is long? In this case, this utterance is, as you see, surely based on your own timescale. This intrinsic viewpoint delivered by real interaction between over different timescales converts a mere temporal region into a genuine experience endowed with time qualia. This is why Bergson regards our experience as intrinsically durational. To have a relatively large temporal extension is a necessary condition for an information system to have a phenomenal consciousness. And lastly, past events. The latter part of his theory of mind might possibly be much less famous, especially in matter memory. He developed quite a peculiar theory concerning the compositional structure of our human mind, not of living being in general. One of the distinctive features of our humankind is to have the so-called episodic memory. In his term, independent memory or spontaneous memory or pure memory. From the ontological perspective, this peculiarity of human being having the episodic memory can be depicted as follows. That is, our information system not only occupies a certain breadth of present, we just looked, but duration, but also contains a set of relevant past events. This means that in terms of the available resources, we have considerably huge advantage compared to the other animals which cannot afford them. By thus having an independent internal information, which is unceasingly changing, our behavior has become infinitely differential and unpredictable. Bergson often uses expressions such as these past resources be inserted or intervene into the ongoing sensory motor processes, which would otherwise be automatic and determined. We certainly still perceive the present stimuli and react against them, just like other living systems. But the crucial difference lies in our having reference to the ever-increasing number of our own past events and using them to differentiate our own decisions, which presumably explains our intellectual creativity. Bergsonian model of mind, coupled with his ontology of time, shows us how comprehensively, from its very emergence of consciousness through to creative ingenuity, the time conditions, or even constitute, to some extent, our mind. Thank you very much.